There are a lot of different composting devices out there.
This is the hotbox system. It's a passive system, so you'll be able to fill it with all the material and leave it. It's made from plastic lumber. It won't rot the way wood will. So it has these pipes down here that go all the way through the system, and they have small holes in them that will allow air to just pass back and forth and aerate the material inside. But they're small enough that rodents won't be able to get into your system.
And what happens in the hotbox is called a batch build, so you get all of your starting materials together at one time. So the starting materials are relatively equal parts greens, browns, water, and air. And you mix all that together. So you get 1 cubic yard, and you put it into the bin and you let it decompose for 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks, you can open up the bin and take it out and put it into another container and let it cure for 12 weeks. And then what you get is this beautiful finished compost.
So the benefits of this amazing hotbox is that it's passive and very fast. It can hold a large quantity as well. And it gets hot, 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 hot.
The 3-bin system, which is the most popular system that I think everyone likes, it's because you can see each stage of the decomposition process.
So the benefits of having a 3-bin system is that you can put a lot of food scraps into these 3 bins, primarily the first bin. We put about 20 gallons of greens and 20 gallons of browns every week. So it's really good for a large garden or a large backyard. It gets really, really hot, so we can cook some of the seeds that are in there so they don't grow. And it's great to build teamwork as well.
Sorry. Oh, yeah.
So a possible con of a 3-bin system is that it requires a lot of physical labor to maintain, but also the benefit is that it's building community through maintaining these 3-bin systems.
Finding inputs for it can be challenging. Browns, sometimes you don't have a lot of that on hand, like dried leaves, wood chips, things like that.
So we're working with the Earth Machine. The Earth Machine is a really practical unit if you don't have a lot of space, you're trying to do some backyard composting, but maybe you can't set up something like our 3-bin system. And it also is more, I would say, rodent-proof than a lot of the other systems because it's a little bit more enclosed. But the way that this works is that we are bringing inputs into our system, bringing in both the greens and the browns, just a few gallons of food each week. And we also, with this unit, really have to monitor the water that is getting into the system. So we're adding water a lot because there's not a lot of points for like rain and natural water to get into the system. It has good pockets for aeration, but of course too, we could keep the lid off. So this lid comes off and we can leave it open and get more exposure to air that way. So the way that this system builds, as we're filling up the contents into the system, we're starting to see the stuff at the bottom start maturing, and it's gonna get to the phase where we would consider it like a phase 2 or a bin 2, sometimes referred to. We don't have 2 bins, so what we do here is we basically stop inputting into the bottom layer of the system. And this becomes our more mature compost, and then we're gonna start building a new layer on top of that where we're adding in new inputs, and we're trying not to mix these two up. We might create like a third level, a fourth level, depending on how much it's maturing. And then eventually we can open up this drawer on the front end of the earth machine, and that's where a lot of our potentially finished compost is gonna be. It's gonna be nice and rich. It's gonna have a lot of macroorganism activity, a lot of worms in there. This system, although especially in like the summertime can get warm, it's not gonna be like the thermophilic kind of composting. It's not necessarily gonna get there if you can't engage with it too much, but it's gonna be really healthy compost if you're adding in the right ingredients.
So this is our metal can system. As you can see, it is 3 garbage cans with holes in them. So in the first can, this is where we're actively adding new material. So we're adding food scraps and our 3-2-1 browns mix. And on top of our active material, we have a biofilter. The second can is the material working. So you don't add anything to your second bin. It's just actively decomposing in there. And your third bin is basically where your finished compost goes.
So some of the advantages of the 3-bin systems is that it's pretty low cost compared to other compost systems. Another advantage is that all of these holes provide lots of aeration, which is great for compost. And yeah, it's a really accessible and relatively easy system to manage.
Okay, so some of the limitations of the metal bin system is that it can get rusty. So on the bottoms, that's why we have them on the concrete pads, which will deter that, but it does tend to happen over time. Also, because of the aeration holes, it will dry out a little bit easier, so it requires a little bit more water than some of the other systems. The ambient temperature, because of the holes, also impacts the system more, so it doesn't retain as much heat. What that means is that it's a longer, slower process for the system. So the system would be a great fit for a small family for 2 to 3 people.
So this is a compost tumbler that you can buy, and it's a plastic bin with an A-frame, and there is aeration on the bottom and the sides, and you fill it up about 50-50 with greens and browns, and you turn it. After a while, when it gets heavy, you need like a few people to help, but you spin it around to mix it up. This is a little bit not as sturdy, so a past apprentice made their own, which is this. It's a food grade bin, and he put a PVC pipe in the center with holes for aeration and a more sturdy A-frame, and it's lifted up more. So pests and stuff don't get into it. And again, mixing 50-50, but we did find that putting a little bit more browns is more helpful because since it's plastic, it retains a lot of moisture.
Some of the disadvantages though is that they can go anaerobic very easily. So what that means is you just want to manage it more closely, and you want to make sure you're turning it enough during the week. So maybe every 3 days is appropriate.
We've been working on this for about a few months, and here's the soil that comes from it.
This is the mini tumbler system. It's made by EnviroCycle. It's made of black plastic, and we have 3 bins diminishing in size that all sit on this base with rollers. So we put the fresh greens and browns into the first tumbler and aerate it by rolling the tumbler on its base. And then as the materials break down over time, we'll move them to the smaller and smaller tumblers until they come out as compost. This is a good system for a small family. It's small enough to fit in someone's yard. Some of the pros are that it's made of this dark plastic that helps retain moisture and heat.
So here we have our passive leaf litter system. This is a composting system because it has water, air, browns, and greens. What's unique about this passive leaf litter system is that it only includes leaves, dried leaves and fresh leaves. There's no food scraps that you're adding. The materials that we have are hardware fabric and zip ties, which are easily accessible materials you could find at any hardware store. And the process involves, throughout the season, adding leaves that have fallen to the ground. Your fresh leaves and your dried leaves are your carbon and nitrogen sources. And since this is a passive system, you're not actively turning or adding any water. The rain will contribute the water that you need for your system. However, if you wanted to speed up the decomposition process, you could add water and auger your bin. And as the material gets older and breaks down more, you'll move it from the initial bin to your second bin, and then eventually to your final bin. And as you can see, the material has broken down quite a bit. You don't necessarily have to wait until your leaves have broken down to this state. You can, if you wanted, just apply this leaf litter, this leaf mold, to your trees or ornamental plants as a mulch.
This is the green cone, which is a very passive type of composter. It's a little bit different from some of the ones where you're actively managing the inputs to eventually get a good compost that you can use to amend your soil or enrich your flowers or houseplants. This is basically sort of a waste reduction system so that you don't have to feel bad about putting compostable organic materials in your trash, in your landfill. It's made of plastic. It's about a family's worth of materials. I've read reviews online where actually a fairly large family can put all of their waste and their pet waste, so their dog poop or whatever else, in this, and it never fills up. So that's a kind of a good measurement for how useful it can be. How you use it is you just take your waste and your organics or your dog poop or whatever, you unfasten this, and then you just open it up and you just dump it in the top, and that's all. That's all you ever have to do. I can show you how it assembles and how it works and how it looks on the inside, because this one is not bolted down. So I'm just going to lift off this top green cone. So you dig a hole and you put this thing that looks kind of like a laundry basket or a very large colander into the hole, and that's ultimately what's going to hold all the organic material that you put in. This cone gets put over and lightly fastened. As you can see, it's open on the top, so air and condensation come up as the material heats up. This is over the whole top, but doesn't touch the black cone. It's wider, so there's room for the cold air and condensation to come back down around the outside. So air and moisture do circulate. This gets bolted onto the black base firmly and securely.
Thank you for watching our overview of the different backyard composting devices. As you've seen, each device has its limitations and its advantages. So take these into consideration when selecting the device that best fits your needs.